everybody, I'm here today with another vocal feminization tutorial. We're going to be continuing our video series on learning styles today. We're going to be talking about the auditory learning style, focusing on establishing our sense of pitch and making adjustments to our vowel shaping to change the tone of our voice. The first thing that I would like to do is to establish the average feminine speaking range, which is from an A3 to an E4. Now, I'm going to play and sing each one of those notes so that you can hear what they sound like, starting from an A3. A3, A sharp 3, B3, C4, C sharp 4, D4, D sharp 4, E4. Okay, so now that we've established our range, let's go through and try practicing converting our pitch to our speaking voice. Let's start from the A3 again. A3, hi, how are you? A sharp 3, hi, how are you? B3, hi, how are you? C4, hi, how are you? C sharp 4, hi, how are you? D4, hi, how are you? D sharp 4, hi, how are you? And finally, E4. E4, hi, how are you? Now that we've had some practice flipping between your singing voice and your speaking voice, let's try a few exercises to help expand your range. What I'm going to do is roll through something called an arpeggio, which is a broken chord. Now, let's say I was playing an E major chord. The bottom note of this will start just a little bit lower on the lowest possible note in the feminine range within averages, which is the E3. Now, we're going to arpeggiate on that, up and down. Give this a try for me. Good. Good. Good job. Good. Got it? And then finally, this chord will cover all of the notes in the speaking range that we were using earlier. This is going to jump from the A3 up to the E4. So, great. Now that we've established the range and we have an exercise to practice developing it and strengthening it up, let's move on to an idea called vowel shaping. The shape that our mouth takes when we're speaking will cause a very dramatic change in the tone quality of our voice. Let's say that we decided to put every word we were going to say onto an O sound. Now, if you take that more narrow shaping, suddenly you'll notice that the voice starts becoming a lot darker and it has something of a masculine quality, even if your range is really up high. The opposite of this, let's say that you take more of an E shape with your mouth. If you notice, the tone immediately brightens and everything lightens and has more of a feminine quality. Now, to demonstrate the difference again, A, E, I, O, and U versus A, E, I, O, and U. The more horizontal spacing you can get there, the better. Now, let's try demonstrating that in something a little bit more established. Let's try singing on a single note and shifting through different mouth shapes while you do it. Start from the C. Now, once you've got that neutral kind of shape going, try flipping between them. And then out into an E. Once you've gotten the feeling for those groups, let's try singing a few notes on that E shape and converting them to speech. So let's give this a try. Hi, how are you? 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 And then finally, hi, how are you? Not only did you notice a change in the brightness of your voice, but you also likely noticed that it was easier to hit some of those notes in the higher ranges in the first place. So, now that we've established all of that, the key points that I would like to try to take away are first, establishing recall. I want you to take one note in particular and practice being able to grab that reliably. The center note of the feminine range is normally a really good choice here. So practice being able to summon a C4 on recall, where you don't really have to think about it a whole lot, and you're able to just kind of grab that note out of thin air. And then flip that to speech. Hi, how are you? That's going to be a rough center range that you're going to float around in, ensuring that you are able to grab the high notes when your voice moves up, and you're able to grab the low notes when your voice moves down. The next point that I'd like you to focus on when you're practicing, again, is your vowel shaping. So make sure to reinforce those E shapes and avoid O shapes, even on vowel sounds that wouldn't necessarily imply it. So take, like, let's say we roll through A through, we'll just go through all of them, the whole range. A, E, I, O, and U. Now, if you noticed, I layered that E shape over each and every group. The only other thing that I would be trying to establish is improving your overall range and your ability to grab higher notes. Like we discussed earlier, both walking up chromatically, one note after another, is a great way to practice, as well as doing the arpeggios.